This conference will now be recorded.
Yes.
Can you kindly make it full screen?
Yeah, Nikhil.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Mudali,
Nikhil is the
Chairman
coordinator.
IICHE Mumbai Regional Center, distinguished members of the Executive Council.
Sir, you just hold on, sir. There will be a formal welcome and introduction by our honorary secretary, Dawal Saxena. Just
Nikhil,
say the please.
can you display the banner?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I started the recording. Just display the flyer actually.
Sir, can you give me the presenting rights?
Yes.
Is it visible?
No, not yet.
Yes.
Nikhil, you are using two systems. Please avoid. Nikhil, put up your. Please hand up. Yeah, only. Nikhil, can you display the banner?
Yes, sir.
I request all other members to mute their mic as well as mute their video.
I think I'm not the presenter yet. Can you give me the rights again, sir?
Oh, Mr. Dawal.
I'm not able to.
Mr. Dawal, you will have the banner. You can display yourself now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah.
You can begin.
So,
you are already late, 5 minutes.
You can resume. So I welcome Dr. Patra over here with us to accept and start up with our Diamond Jubilee Special Lecture Series of IICHE MRC. And we have, sir, over here with us our IICHE MRC Chairman Dr. Mudali sir and all our committee members, Praveen Saxena ji, TL Prasad sir, Mahendra Patel sir, he is the treasurer, Anita Kumari madam, vice president, vice chairman, Sridhar Chitnavis sir, VY Sane sir, some past president VK Srivastava ji, and many student coordinators are also there. So I welcome all to begin this session, and special thanks to Dr. R.M. Patra for accepting and joining to address this session. So I would like to introduce Dr. R.M. Patra over here. He has completed his PhD on reverse osmosis and hyperfiltration and served as Director and Chairman Managing Director of Indian Rare Earth Limited, Mumbai, for more than 9 years, and R&D of process related to reverse osmosis, desalination of brackish water and seawater by membrane process at Bhabha Atomic Research Center, R&D of process pilot plant and commercial process plant related to production of rare earth chemicals, solvent extraction plant for rare earth separation,
Can you
decommissioning
display the
of
second page?
radioactive. Yes, sir. The decommissioning of radioactive process plants after end of life cycle operation of hydrometallurgical process plants, complying with clearances, pollution control norms for mining, mineral production, etc. And he has participated in various national and international seminars as invited speaker and lead organizer. So we welcome Dr. R.M. Patra, and we would be, sir, we are happy to have you here and delighted to and eager to hear you out. So, to unmute, sir. Yeah, please, sir.
I thank Chairman and members of the Executive Council of Indian Institute of Chemical Engineers, Mumbai Regional Center, for giving me this opportunity to interact with you all on the occasion of Silver Jubilee of this esteemed institution. It makes me a little nostalgic because more than 40 years before I was a member of this, when I started my career in Bhabha Atomic Research Center, I was a member of Indian Institute of Chemical Engineers. After serving there for 12 years, when I got transferred to Orissa, I lost the link. And today, thanks to my colleague and friend, Dr. Mudali, I am before all of you. Among the audience, I see some of my old acquaintances, friends, and colleagues. And it makes me extremely happy to see Dhaval Saxena, the son of my old colleague and senior Mr. Arun Kumar Saxena in Bhabha Atomic Research Center. With this, let us start the presentation. The topic suggested to me by the chairman is role of chemical engineers in the process extraction metallurgy for industrial application or for general applications. So to highlight this, I have chosen the atomic energy and the domain, industry domain in which I spent my whole career. To me, nothing more appropriate can be what the bits and mineral industry or rare earth processing or the current technology performance elements has to offer for highlighting the role of chemical engineers in material and metal processing. As we know, chemical engineers came into prominence in the early 20th century when petroleum refining became order of the day. And everybody started using the gasoline, and there was an increasing demand for the hydrocarbon-based fuels, liquid fuels. Today, we are on the threshold of another energy revolution, where we are going to migrate to a renewable energy scenario, replacing the oil era. So there, the particular industry domain which I am going to present before all of you bears tremendous significance. Can we have the slides in the enlarged mode.
Yeah, just Nikhil, you can share the screen.
Yes, sir. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, I can see the screen. Okay.
Okay.
Is this the maximum size that you get it? Okay, fine. Okay, next one.
No, you can make full screen.
This is full screen.
Okay.
Pardon?
Actually, Patra sir, there is a zoom button at the right side of your this window.
Which one?
Yeah, just click on that. It may be at 58%.
Acha, here, this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
From there you can
And
minimize and
can I change the slides also from my console, or I need to request you to do that?
I'll do that.
Mr. Nikhil will do it.
Okay, next one.
Otherwise,
It's just
you
a
have to
general
present it. Yeah.
disclaimer. Okay, next one. Okay, so this is the three-stage nuclear atomic energy program which our country has been pursuing since independence. I bring this to light to highlight three important things: reuse, recycle, and reduce the consumption, which has been the buzzwords now. You know, India, as of now, is not a signatory to Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. And we are yet to become a member of the Nuclear Suppliers Group, NSG. So the nuclear power program, which involves development, usage, application of many sensitive advanced technologies, was not available to us. The result, we have to stand on our own feet and develop the entire gamut of materials, starting from mineral extraction, mineral processing, metallurgy of these nuclear materials, and converting them to nuclear fuel, and to recycle the fuel after they are used in the nuclear reactor and burned. To make the matter worse, this country is not endowed with good, rich resources of uranium. And our nuclear uranium resources are as low as 300 part per million, 0.03%. And it is heartening to note that the entire nuclear power program of this country is on extracting uranium from 300 ppm. Today, what the world is talking of utilizing the mine waste or recovering materials from ppm quantity of things. Thorium, which is available in plenty, at least 5 times that of the established resources of uranium in this country, unfortunately is not fissile. It cannot itself break and give nuclear energy. It needs to be converted to uranium-233, and for that it needs to burn in presence of either plutonium-239 or uranium-235. The isotope of uranium available in the natural uranium in as low as 0.7% only. So this in essence is a challenge to the process technologists, to the chemical engineers, to the metallurgists. The next slide will highlight what are the spin-off of nuclear energy, which the mid 21st century is awaiting for all of us to embrace. By 2050, it is almost projected that we will be migrating to complete renewable energy scenario, and hydrogen probably will be playing a key role. Atomic Energy's program in our country has already envisaged, same the previous one, the hydrogen generation from high temperature nuclear reactors. As the fuels born in the reactor, they generate spent fuel or the fissile materials where the element atomic number is less than that of uranium. And many of them are rare earths. Rare earths incidentally are neutron poisons. So as the fuel burns and the rare earths build up in the nuclear fuel, the reactivity of the nuclear fuel gets reduced because free neutrons availability is diminished as they get absorbed more and more by the rare earths. Gadolinium, europium, samarium are prominent among the rare earth family, which are known to have high neutron absorption cross-section. So after certain time, after certain burn up, the fuel needs to be removed from the reactor, known as spent fuel, reprocessed, and these rare earths, the fissile products, needs to be removed, and rest of the fuel which is not used up is recycled. So this is an excellent example of recycling. And by recycling, you reduce the use of virgin materials, and this holds the prospect of tapping tremendous amount of energy for the future to come. Incidentally, the renewable energy penetration that we are seeing now, thanks to economic competitiveness of solar photovoltaics, wind turbines, are making the prospects very bright for generation of hydrogen from electrolysis of water, either in acidic media or in alkali media. About a year or more so back, Bhabha Atomic Research Center announced the availability of hydrogen generation technology by alkaline water electrolysis, and the country is now ready for this. Same way we use zirconium alloy in the reactors. Titanium alloys are used for other strategic applications, defense sector, and so on and so forth. Next. Next. Yeah. So this is a snapshot of the minerals that has 28 elements, all strategic, coming from a single source, that is the beach sand. That is the sand we see in the coastal areas of the east coast and west coast of our country. These minerals often occur together, and there are 7. 3 of them are titanium bearing, the ilmenite, leucoxene, and rutile. And in the bracket, I have shown the elements they have, like ilmenite of titanium, iron, scandium, oxygen. Leucoxene has richer amount of titanium dioxide, and rutile has the highest content of titanium dioxide. Zircon has hafnium, zirconium, and silicon. Monazite, thorium, uranium, protactinium, phosphorus, helium, and 15 on the rare earths. Sillimanite, aluminum silicate, and the garnet is there as the iron aluminum silicate. I think it's not seen in this slide, probably because of the aspect ratio problem. Okay, next. So this is a periodic table. So rare earths, you can see 57 to 71. Scandium and yttrium added. Group 3 of the periodic table. And then you can look at helium. Helium is actually a radiation daughter product of thorium in monazite. Thorium we'll see in the next slide, and uranium are radioactive, and how radioactivity gives rise to alpha emission, and helium is basically an alpha atom when it is charges are neutralized with an electron, and that is helium. Next. Next. Yes, so this table essentially picks up the elements which are not stable under natural condition due to the aspects of nuclear physics. Their nucleus is not stable, and hence they deteriorate or they give up alpha, beta, gamma, and deteriorate to their more stable phase. And they have various half-life. Half-life is an indication by that time half of the quantity has deteriorated to the next stable stage. Now you see the thorium is the highest half-life. Uranium is much less compared to thorium, and all others are less. So in this, we'll see protractinium, one rare earth, whose half-life is much less, and hence from promethium, a rare earth whose half-life is much less, and we don't get it in the rare earth, that is 61. Now rare earths are not rare, which we have already shown in this slide, and you can see the crustal abundance, which are much less compared to many common elements. We are acquainted with nickel, copper, cobalt, lead, tin, mercury, and gold. Next. Next one. So this is a brief snapshot of the history of the rare earths. Now there are total 17, 21, 39 atomic number, 57 to 71. 61, as we have said, promethium is not having stable isotope under normal condition, so not seen. So total 16. So out of 16, they are typically classed under two groups, light rare earths and heavy rare earths. The light one are represented by cerium, which is the most dominant among them, and they are known as cerics. And the heavy one is represented by yttrium, the most dominant in the group, and known as yttrics. Now, heavy rare earths, incidentally, is not heavy because their density is heavy. Some of the heavy rare earths, like scandium, are having much low density, but they are light or heavy due to historical reasons, which you will see in the next slide. Next. Now, here is the slide which shows why the heavy rare earths are called heavy and light rare earths called light. Because rare earths from the minerals, from the respective minerals, are typically leached into acidic solutions and then recovered by precipitating, by changing the acidity. If you look at this table, the heavy rare earths are the first to precipitate as the pH rises from highly acidic to the alkaline side. And the lighter rare earths are the last to precipitate. That's the reason, because as per the conventional understanding, the heavier ones are the first to settle. So the heavy rare earths are those which settle at much lower pH compared to the light rare earths. Next. This is the geology we all learn from the nature. When the universe formed and the earth was like a fiery fireball, the rare earths being very heavy, they sunk to the mantle or to the center of the earth along with iron, nickel, and all heavy elements. As the earth's surface cooled, we had the crust and the mantle, the surface of the earth, what you know as the crust. And over the period of geological period, cracks happened or the tectonic plates formed, which started shifting because the mantle is a liquid one and it also rotates along with the rotation of the earth. And due to the geologic forces, there is incidental or accidental periodic eruption of these lava, molten lava from the mantle to the surface. And the rare earth, along with other heavy metals like iron, nickel, they come to the surface and they settle. When they settle, they're highly reactive, so they react with silica to form silicate minerals. They react with fluorine to form chloride minerals. They react with oxygen to form oxidic minerals. and so on and so forth, even phosphate to form phosphatic minerals. Most of the rare earths are found in their concentrated form in alkaline geological setting, which are comparatively less in silicate and more in carbonate, known as carbonatite. The kind of rare earth we see in our country in the coastal areas are known as placers because they are in the phosphate form, which is most stable. And this phosphate is a mixture of thorium and rare earth phosphate, which is known as monazite. And because of its stability, and it has the highest density around 5.2 in its mineral phase, the weathering action when it degrades or deteriorates the molten lava that has already solidified on the surface, these minerals get released and they get carried by the river to the seabed, and the wave action of the sea concentrates these minerals and deposits them on the coast. And today we are seeing them as the placer deposit, what we call. So that is how is the genesis of monazite or the rare earth deposit in our country. Next. So this is just a reserve statistics of these various rare earths and their things. So they keep changing and more reserves get notified, and some are also exploited by mining. So, and the country is quite rich in titanium, zirconium, and in monazite deposits. Next. Now this is a snapshot of the various operating divisions of the Indian Rare Earth Limited. Today it is the only company who is engaged in doing bits and mining. They have one plant in Kerala, one mine in Tamil Nadu, one in Orissa Sand Complex, Orissa. The monazite is produced in all the three mines, and it is processed in Orissa in a 10,000 ton per annum monazite processing plant. The rare earth is recovered in mixed form and is taken to Alwa for refining. And there you get all refined products, 99.9% pure rare earths, neodymium, praseodymium, cerium, lanthanum, dysprosium, terbium, and so on and so forth. Next. So this is two type of deposit, placer and the dunes. The dunes, you can see the dark bands. They are the rare earth deposit bands. The placer deposit, you can see the dark patch on the coastal beach of Kerala, Kovalam. Next. This is a sustainable process where during monsoon, the sea waves will typically deposit it on the coast, and post monsoon, they are harvested in Kerala beach. In Orissa, it is conventional mining where you dredge it out below water table and then recover the heavy minerals from the gangue. Next. This is the history of bits and mineral. Started in 1891 as gas mantle. Those days, electric bulbs. Thomas Alva Edison was just trying to popularize his invention, and the gas mantle was a method to generate bright light out of dull yellow lamp of gas burners. So then thorium was in demand, and rare earths didn't have any application. But over the period, the scenario changed. Electric bulbs replaced thorium gas mantle, and rare earths today are finding applications everywhere, and thorium has to be stockpiled for its future use in atomic energy program and extraction of energy. Next. So this is the thorium and uranium decay series. If you look at the decay series, you will see the alpha emission results in formation of daughter products, and this alpha is helium, which is trapped in the monazite matrix and is recovered when you crack monazite for recovering rare earths. Next. The main drivers of this in 19th century, the driver of rare earth application was lighting, basically. 20th century, thanks to awareness of environment conservation, ozone depletion, global warming, occupational health coming out of lead poisoning. We have various applications with rare earths, which you can see in the subsequent slides, and we'll move on to that. Next. I think these are details which you can see. So in the early 20th century, rare earths were all used in mixed form. But later on, it was all used in separated form because the separation technology, solvent extraction, ion exchange was very expensive in the mid 20th century. As they became more affordable, so pure rare earths are available and they could be used for various high-tech applications like permanent magnets having very high energy products, LED light emitting diodes having very good optical efficiency and which are energy efficient, many special catalysts, and so on and so forth. Next. So these are usage of rare earths in details. The next 3 slides, I will not take time. I mean, anybody interested can really go through it because this particular presentation will be made available. We'll move on to the next. And the point to be made is chemical engineers all play a very significant role in the processing extraction of these materials and converting them to a usable form where they are used in metallurgical sectors, optical sectors, magnet, electrical components, systems, special applications like giant magnetic restriction, like a small speaker giving very good reproduction of sound, which is known as GMR. This is again a rare earth alloy that impacts this. Then you have magnetic refrigeration, which consumes 40% energy of our conventional refrigeration system. All these is because of rare earth special properties. Next. Next. We have already covered this. So non-nuclear application of thorium we have tried to highlight. One was the carbon arc light lamps, which was there 40 years back for CinemaScope projection. Today, you don't see this because you have all digital projection and you have all much, even LEDs have replaced that for this projection system. Gas mantles long gone. Petromax light, which was used to give brightness to the dull yellow flame of gas burner. Tungsten arc welding is today used. The glow switch contacts, tube lights, they are also on their ways to phase out. When you switch in the tube light, the starters are the one which is create a make and break circuit to give the voltage to the tube light, and that's how it is. Magnesium thorium alloy, incidentally, was the aerospace alloy in the 1980s, but then replaced due to availability of titanium alloys and better aluminum alloys. Next. So now this is the ilmenite. They come from the rock source. They come from the sand in India. And some of these are in the gem also. And we have given a list of their history, which can be traced. And it's very interesting. Next. The purpose of showing all these three, what nature has done, the chemical engineers tries to do it in the lab, which will see how the value addition really unlocks the wealth from these minerals. So this is the rutile. We have given in short the history of its nomenclature and sand and rock and the gem. Next. Yeah, this in snapshot is the value addition chain of the titanium bearing minerals. Now you can see that ilmenite 94% is converted to titanium pigment, white pigment, which are long lasting and very durable and expensive also. And we make titanium metal also, which finds usage in aerospace and has got specific usage in chemical equipments, particularly desalination and many corrosion resistant systems. Next. So this is an interesting use of ilmenite per se. Today we all talk of carbon sequestration. Now you see, you use air to oxidize ilmenite, which acts as an oxygen carrier. Then you burn the natural gas or the syngas made out of pyrolysis of biomass, and you get a mixture of only carbon dioxide and water. Water can be easily separated, and carbon dioxide is available in concentrated form for sequestration purpose. The similar thing can be also done by replacing ilmenite with ferric oxide or iron oxide. This is the technology that is under research and active development by many companies world over. Next. This is zircon. Again, same way, sand, rock, and the gem. Next. This is the value chain of zircon. We have even your printer cartridge or ink, the piezoelectric system that is there in the printer, which gives the impetus for the liquid ink to come out, is a zircon ceramic. And it has many other usage apart from zirconium metal finding usage in chemical process equipment, which are corrosion resistant. Next. This is monazite. We have already heard about it. We'll quickly switch over. Next. And these are the processing scenario. Next. This is the thorium nitrate production that happened in the 1950s and continued till 1998, after which it was disbanded in Trombay. This was by fractional precipitation. Thorium nitrate is a dying market because LED and batteries have completely replaced gas mantles. Today, we use this process by solvent extraction to produce nuclear grade purity material, which the Department of Atomic Energy is now using for the future thorium-based nuclear energy program, which you have seen, the 3-stage program. Next. Next. So this is solvent extraction. The history is basically the atomic energy which pioneered this. Next. These are the various issues and challenges of solvent extraction. I will not go into details. This is due to paucity of time. Members, the audience, they can always look into this and learn more about it. Next. Sillimanite, aluminum silicate. It has 58 to 60% alumina, similar to that in bauxite, but they are in bound form. They are not free form. So it is very difficult to extract alumina out of it. Next, but this is a very vital material for refractory applications in ceramics. Next. Next. This is the garnet, almandine. Garnets are of different variety, but the one we get in civic sand is almandine variety. Next one. Now here they have got mostly abrasive and other applications, water jet cutting, your weathered gene and all that. They are all made of garnet, which is stone wash gene, what we call. Next. This is a substitute for silica, which is notorious for silicosis. Now we end this because this rare earth, atomic energy, nuclear and renewable source, performance material, technology material, they are evolving so fast that it is very difficult for countries to keep in pace. It only needs active collaboration between the industries, R&D and academia to see that we are always in the state of having the state of the art technology. This is a phenomena that we saw somewhere in South America in Honduras. You see, the bridge was built using the latest technology and the expertise of the most experienced farm. But by the time the bridge was complete, there was a natural phenomena, tsunami, earthquake, which changed the river course. And today the bridge is left in a place which is away from the river. Same thing we see today in coronavirus pandemic, where all our calculation projections have gone to nuts. And we are faced with a challenge to evolve. And that is a test of our resilience and how we face these challenges. Same is the story with this technology, which I just now narrated. Thank you.
Hello, Dawal.
Yes.
So, shall we have some questions? Some members.
Yeah. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir. So those who are interested, one by one, maybe some 5-6 questions we can allow. Please introduce yourself and you can ask the question. If you are not putting question, please put off yourself. If you are asking question, please come on the camera, mic, you can ask question. Mr. VK Srivastava, you want to ask some question?
No, Mr. Just like that, I've made my video on. I have worked with him for nearly 40 years, so I just switched on.
Yes. Yes, please. Yes, please. So any member who want to ask question?
Yeah. Hello. May I ask a question?
Yeah, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm a retired chemical engineer. So we hardly learn about these rare earths at all in the college days. What about the present generation? This presentation should be shared with the present generation. They need to know very much. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
Not only that, we need to establish the missing value link for rare earths. See, rare earths, as I shown, it starts with mining of its minerals, mineral extraction, then refining, then converting it to performance materials, the high technology materials. Today, this country has technology and commercial production is happening for refined product, which are 99.9% pure, elemental pure. But after that, we lack the technology to convert the oxide to metal, metal to alloy, alloy to magnets. And this country is a growing market for these permanent magnets, NdFeB, neodymium iron boron magnets. Thanks to the of atomic energy, they have taken up certain research program. Atomic energy was the first to make rare earth metal, incidentally, in 1970s. But that was all for our own captive purpose. Later on, we somehow missed the link. And today, we need to really establish technologies which are competitive for large-scale commercial application. No doubt, we are self-sufficient for our strategic need, whether it is samarium cobalt magnet for Indian space applications or atomic energy application, defense, we are self-sufficient. But when it comes to using these materials for civilian sector like energy efficient DC motors, energy efficient electric vehicle drives, we are nowhere. That's the challenge. I think only chemical engineers working hand in hand with metallurgists and material scientists can realize this goal.
Another question. What about lithium battery cells? Is India having sufficient material in lithium resources?
Okay, lithium is a group 1 material. It is a
Couldn't hear you.
Yeah, Patraji, you are not heard.
Yeah.
okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
So lithium is a group 1 material in the periodic table. It is alkaline earth. It sounds similar to lanthanum, which is 57 atomic number. That is group 3, rare transition material. So is a atomic mineral under MMDR Act 1957, Schedule 1, MMDR Mineral Metal Development Regulation Act 1957. but lithium availability in this country is meager. Our exploration of this particular element or metal is being done by Atomic Mineral Directorate Exploration Research, Hyderabad, in short known as AMD. Whatever we have is mostly from rock source, spodumene or lepidolite. We don't have the brine, which is being tapped in countries, Argentina, Bolivia, or Chile.
Okay,
We have
thank
much-
you.
Dr. Patra, I can ask a general question.
Yes.
So what is your present generation of young chemical engineers, the students?
Pardon?
What is your message for the young chemical engineers, the student community who are studying now, particularly with respect to this rare earths and the mineral processing, the
See,
chemical
my
engineering
message
graduate?
is the prospect of extractive metallurgy, the prospect of material processing is always bright and expanding. It's only evolving in a new form. Just like we refine the crude to get various fractions of petroleum products having utility to end consumer, we refine this mixed rare earth material coming out from its ore monazite to various pure rare earth elements and convert them to various form, either ceramic or metal or alloys, for their end use application, which are known as technology materials or high performance materials. So we have enough of talents, knowledge base in this country, but what we lack today is an intimate knowledge between the academic institutions, R&D organizations, and the industries. Our chemical engineers, thanks to our government, today 3 things I see which is not there for last 70 years. Number 1, defense production indigenous has started. This is something which was lacking for years. And if I look at the development history of these particular materials in Western Europe and USA, even in China, it is defense production which has given the impetus or the encouragement to development of these extractive metallurgy industries and this particular kind of value chain. Number 2, processing this material is highly energy intensive. Till last 5 years back, energy was a scarce commodity in this country. We all are used to load shedding, and even a large part of India was not electrified. But today, the reverse. We have surplus of electricity, and thanks to the economic competitiveness of renewable energy sources, solar photovoltaics and wind energy, it is affordable and we can compete with the world for making these materials, notwithstanding their high energy demand. But the concern is, while we target to have 100 gigawatt of solar photovoltaic, we don't produce a gram of the solar grade silicon. The technology is nothing high tech. We know this. So this is the challenge for today's chemical engineers. And the scale in which you need to do is not big. I have within everything can happen within 10 crore, making solar grade silicon, making the chips. But when it comes to making electronic processing, the investments are high. When it comes to panel manufacturing, investment are high. This is the challenge that all the chemical engineers and metallurgists, particularly extractive metallurgists, have to address.
Anyone else want to ask?
Yeah, I am Joy Shah. I have one question, doctor.
Yes.
We were using the catalyst in refinery and petrochemical, and
Yes.
we were charged hefty almost 10 to 20 times than precious metal, saying that there is a rare earth in that catalyst, and which is making this catalyst very expensive. Now, from the span catalyst, we were able to recover only the precious metal, not the rare earth metal, which was a major cost of the catalyst. So, is it possible we recover this rare earth metal from the catalyst, various catalysts, and will it make the economic sense?
Can you, sir, tell me which catalyst you are using? Because rare earths is used in various catalysts. Let me tell you where it is used. In
Yeah.
automobile for exhaust control, particularly gasoline engine, it
Yes.
is used along with silicon.
Yes.
Cerium is used, cerium oxide, zirconium oxide in the gasoline engine exhaust control catalyst. It is also used in diesel exhaust control along with what you call platinum. The gasoline engines use palladium. Other diesel engine use platinum.
No. We were using. Yeah, I agree, doctor. We were using these catalysts for the partial oxidation or different type of various petrochemical processes, and those catalysts is not in a small quantity. We used to use almost 50 tons, 100 tons of catalyst, which was having about 14%, 15% silver, but the cost of catalyst is almost 10 times 20 times the cost of silver.
But
So
does it
that
have
was-
error? But does it? The
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make is, if it is cerium and lanthanum, they're available very cheap. It is about what?
Okay.
$5, 99.9% pure today.
Okay.
But in 2011, when there was export control by Chinese government, the prices of cerium and lanthanum jumped to about 60, 70, $100 per kilo. So that time, few of the processing factories in Toloja, I know, it will not be proper on my part to name them. They were processing these for Japanese companies and charging them $8 per kilo as conversion charges. So our entrepreneurship is great. Our knowledge base is great. Only thing, there has to be a market. There has to be a, driver of demand. So then it is possible. So it's all cost and availability. Today it may not be tomorrow. The Japanese, they don't have any resource. So what they do, they stockpile. Japan has got a stockpile of used electronic equipments. Because in case there is a supply embargo or problem, they can recover it from there. In the mountainside, they keep it in trenches. We don't have a policy in this country. Otherwise, there is no problem.
Maybe if I want to, yes, doctor, if I want to check what type of rare earth is there, and if I want to do some economic analysis whether recovery is economical or not, who can help me? Who can help me in India?
I can help you. There are enough information in the net. It is not a problem. You call me anytime, I will tell you what is the price, what it is.
Okay.
You can search the net and get the information also.
No, I have to find out what type of rare earth is there, which is making the catalyst so expensive, and then perhaps we can think of recovery within India itself.
Rare earth makes the catalyst expensive because the rare earths which definitely are used in catalyst, which are very cheap today.
Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Any more questions?
Can I ask the question?
Yes, please.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Patra. I am Praveen Saxena, Vice President, IICHE, and presently in charge of student chapters. And my question is to the extension of Dr. Mudali. Whether this field is coming a field giving the opportunities to the students to work in this field, because many fields are there, like this era has gone now. Now the area is going. So what you give the message to the student, they work on this rare earth technology or on a rare earth subject sector, will be having a coming era for next decade or some.
Plenty of opportunity. The students can work on separation of rare earth, refining side. Student can work on making metal out of rare earth. It doesn't require much investment. Universities can pursue it. Colleges can pursue it. But it requires the willingness to dirty your hand. Today it is much easier to sit before a computer in a C room and do simulation and get your PhD rather than make hands dirty and make your own fabrication of equipment. We all did it 50 years back. But today there is less need for that. It only requires a policy level push.
Any other question? Anybody want to ask question? Let me take the opportunity to thank Dr. Patra for being with us today.
I have a, Dr.
And this
Mudali,
is- Yes, please.
I have a suggestion.
Yeah, I have been asking repeatedly. Please ask.
No, it is actually my suggestion to Dhawal and as well as to Praveenji for making Dr. Patra, who he said in the beginning that for initial 12 years he was a member, and then later on in 89 he went to IRE, and then his link got delinked, from IISHE affairs. So can I request Dhawal and Praveenji to pursue and make him honorary member? That is what I can say, because he is a well-known person to me since 77. And I didn't know that he's not a member. Now, he got delinked in between. So I request Praveenji as well as Dhawal to make him honorary member, because his CV is highly fascinating to me as well. And whenever chances comes, I always prefer to listen to him. So please make him member, an honorary member.
I will approve Dr. Patra and do the needful.
Thank you for this kind offer. Yes, I'm really grateful. Thankful.
Definitely.
So let me thank Dr. Rabindranath Patra for accepting my invitation and delivering a lecture on the role of chemical engineers in the extraction of materials useful for the application in the industry. It certainly you gave a bird's eye view of the formation of rare earths, their importance, their extraction, their application. I think a textbook matter has been given just in 35 minutes by you in a lucid manner. And of course, that we can learn more by doing further study using the available literature. Thanks for accepting our invitation and giving this opening lecture of the Diamond Jubilee lecture series of our IACH MRC. On behalf of all the members and the executive committee members of the IACH MRC, thanks to you once again, sir, for accepting and sparing this evening with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yes,
It was
I am also
namaskar.
happy. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm
Thanks,
also
sir.
happy to announce. I am happy to announce that on December 12th, we have another talk that is going to be there December 12th. The talk will be delivered by Dr. Sudhastava Basu, Director IMMT, Bhubaneswar, and he will speak on energy on fingertips, membraneless microfluidic water electrolyzer for hydrogen and oxygen production. It's also a very important topic today, considering the production of hydrogen and oxygen. And this lecture is on December 12th, Saturday, 6:30 p.m. as it is done. So the next month lecture is also now announced. I request all of you to note it down, and so that you can definitely join on that day. And, now I thank every one of you, including the speaker, Dr. Batra, for joining this evening for the first Diamond Jubilee lecture. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Switch on the webcams to take some snapshots. Just in the memory
Yeah.
will be displayed.
Everybody
Please
can.
switch on the webcams.
The slide can be removed now.
Yes, Nikhil, you can remove.
The slide.
Yeah.
Yeah, I request everyone to put the camera on now. Please put your
Sure.
camera on now.
Yeah. Manshu,
Mahendra Patra,
Okay.
Patel.
Nikhil, you have taken?
Yes, sir, I have.
Fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
All the-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patra.
Thank you, Dr. Patra. Thank you, Dhawal.
Thank you, Dr. Patra.
Bye.
Yeah. Dhawal, you will be sending the information for the next lecture so I can put it on the website.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. Even this video will be published on YouTube. So then we will be circulating and the link can be put on the website.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Yes,
this lecture we put on the link for all the members to see.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yes, sir.
Patra said it distributed.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Night.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.